with the next plenary session, which is called Adapting Fintech to High-Interest Environments, Innovations and Revenue Models. And beforehand, as always, we'll watch the introductory video.
Muy bien. Bueno, vamos a...
Okay, great. So after this, we'll introduce the moderator of this session, who is Gonzalo Arauz, the Principal Officer of Digital Economy of IDB Invest. Thank you for being with us, Gonzalo. The panelists are Pablo Santos, founder and CEO of Finactiva. Welcome to the stage. Miriam Cosio, Chief External Affairs Officer of CLIP. Amilcar Perea, President of the Uruguayan Chamber of International Information Technologies, CUTI, and General Manager of InSwitch, and Mark Harper, Chief Financial Officer of Voila. Welcome as well. Gonzalo, are we ready? We are ready, yes. So first of all, thank you very much to the organization for inviting me to discuss this issue, which I'm very passionate about, which is fintech. It's not only the main engine of venture capital in the region, but it's a sector that's obsessed with improving financial inclusion and solving the problems that the financial services have in the region, and has had an impact after 10 years of incidents in the sector. Well, it's been a trending topic, so to speak, for the last 10 years. It's increased the capability to access financial services in the region, and it's seen ups and downs. We've often discussed how crises have affected it. We've been through a pandemic. We've seen some flourishing moments, and we're facing important challenges nowadays, like the increase in rates and the lower availability of capital. So I am glad that I have such a diverse panel that we can cover the whole region and the different verticals that the fintech industry offers. So first of all, I'll pose an open question for you, Pablo. How do you see the trends, the current emerging trends that will shape the fintech industry in the next 5 years or 4, if you'd like? Well, in order to understand trends, we need to look at the original structures of the region to satisfy both markets of people and companies. In terms of the fuel industry, for instance, we've seen how fundamental problems have been sustained in this industry, but it has also changed. In the last years, the region has received 30 billion in venture capital. This has affected several sectors of the region, mainly Mexico and Brazil. Colombia has received 8,000 of these 8 billion. And talent has been transformed digitally. Companies of the region and SMEs of the region has been increasingly digitalized. Data software, financial management softwares, all of the tools that companies use in a daily basis have changed and are fundamental supplies for companies to solve the main problems they have to access quality financial services. On the one hand, the problem is the asymmetry of information. How can we track and make visible all of the information we have today, payments behaviors, the different metrics, the different non-traditional variables? We are using all of those variables at fintechs today, and we need to develop those tools and be able to make a risk assessment properly. And the products being developed should be used to improve financial health. We have been focused on offering financial inclusion, but we should also focus on achieving financial health both of people as well as of companies. People should be able to access credit, save, have insurance, have a proper cash flow, a stable cash flow to be able to improve and have a business. That is key, I believe. And in terms of the context, technological tools are increasingly evolving, they are increasingly more dynamic, and they are cheaper, so they become democratized and widely used, such as AI, as we've seen with AI, open finance in this region, electronic billing. All of this has enabled companies to create financing tools and financial services tools that are more adequate for companies. If we look at the capital influx that we've seen in the last years, the offer of financial services and solutions has evolved. We've seen that companies have been created offering specific solutions for companies such as Nuba or Walla or Confio in Mexico, and then we had a capital boom. Those companies scaled very well, but others did not. And in the last years, they've been more focused in building infrastructure to enable rails for not only fintech, but also other companies can diversify their business offer. And in the last years, we've also been focused in how to offer software as a service for financial management, and products are more embedded today. The offer is more proactive and not as much reactive. You gave me this idea, speaking about software as a service. Amilcar, in your role at InSwitch and based on your experience with the Uruguayan energy sector and the chamber, can you tell me about the emerging trends that you see in all of the countries that you work in? What are the emerging trends that you think are most important in the region? And if I may, I'd also like to ask you about the regulatory issue. I am fascinated by the fact that the fintech industry is readily available to bring in new solutions, questioning, proposing regulatory changes. Sorry, I am making the question really complex. You have 30 seconds to answer. Don't worry. So the first thing I'll say is hello to all the Uruguayan fellows. We'll discuss Uruguay afterwards, but I wouldn't like to contradict Pablo. I really share what he says. He mentioned one of the trends that I think it's the main trend nowadays, which is embedded finance. Basically, what's changing the world of access to financial services is to be able to incorporate those services, whether it is a payment, a financing option, a collection or a split, a delivery of money, whatever it is within the flow of companies. We work in 30 countries, and our vision is basically rather generic, but we are focused in Latin America. And what happens when we consume a service in digital or physical format? Let's pose the typical case of embedded finance.
If we take a Uber, we make the trip, and there was a payment instance that was generated there. It's not that we use a credit card, but that is embedded in the company's business flow. Our company is Uber's wallet in Mexico. And I'd like to tell you what's happening in the back office of that simple and transparent and seamless payment process without any kind of intervention. What's happening in the back office is that a quote was generated, whether the payment means allows it, that amount is reserved, is put aside, and when the amount is finished, we collect. Then there's a split that takes place, what belongs to Uber, what belongs to the driver, and if it's a country where you can collect cash, you quote with the cash wallet and different payment means. And if you cannot do that, you have an advance that takes place so that you can cover that cost. There are many things that happen in the back office, and that is what we call embedded finances. All those things are happening, and different sectors are involved there. As Pablo said, the Fintech today play a central role facing the people, and other Fintechs are the enablers of other Fintechs, such as Walla here, or Uber, or a bank, or retail companies, or any other kind of companies that need to incorporate those skills in their business flow in a friendly fashion and accept payments. One of the big stars will be in the future the embedded finances. There's a second trend here, which is very much related to border payments and the reality of digital business, where the borders are quite fuzzy, and I meant cross-border payments. Out of all of us here, if we want to create an English academy, we won't say, let's rent a place and put a notice. We're not going to do that. We're going to do it digitally. Where can we get customers? Are we going to search for customers here in the city of Buenos Aires or throughout the Spanish-speaking world? And if we do well and we have to hire more teachers, where will we get teachers? In Buenos Aires or in the Spanish-speaking world? And those customers need to get charged, and those teachers need to get paid, and those clients need to get a finance. And the customer may be in Colombia, Mexico, Argentina, or Uruguay, whatever. And those business have to be done in an unlimited modality from the geographic point of view. The same thing happens with your companies. The very same thing applies. One of the core lines, guiding principles, is that they come and tell us, I'm doing excellent in Argentina and Mexico, I want to penetrate Brazil and Colombia, and we facilitate that penetration in different markets. And if somebody comes along and says, I want to penetrate Bolivia, Paraguay, and Ecuador, my question is, why only those three? If you have a digital business, why, if there's a business that has a logistics or delivery or specific characteristic, then of course I can tell you, okay, I understand why only three. But if it's a digital format we're thinking of, we have to go beyond borders. And the Uruguayan typical person thinks about going beyond your borders. The main fear we all have, those of us playing in global markets, is that each country's authorities will think about regulating things that they think are great. And what we need in that borderless world is regulations that are uniform throughout countries. That is why we need players or stakeholders such as the IDB or other international organizations that can shed light on governments so that they can use what already works in other countries, open borders in Mexico, interoperability in Brazil. Many things work very well. They are examples that should be copied. And when we don't get that, we move along anyway and we try to impose that reality. Not because we do not like regulations, because regulations always favor consumers and technology is favorable for consumers, and the goal is to deliver the best quality to the consumer, but rather not to have regulation as an obstacle. We work with many banks nowadays, and for many years we've had the incumbencies or the incumbent officials in private entities or the state putting a blocking the progress, and we always had to move ahead. For instance, let's think about cryptocurrencies or cross-border issues. We just moved along as much as we could, and in the best way we could. Miriam, CLIP is a leader in Mexico regarding electronic payments. What's the future? Which are the barriers that Mexico has today to achieve better financial inclusion? And how is CLIP working to overcome those challenges? First of all, I'd like to thank you for the invitation. I'm delighted to be here. CLIP is precisely a device similar to Point Mercado Pago here in Argentina or Spore in the US, which facilitates the acceptance of e-payments for small businesses. Challenges are huge. They are not different to those in Latin America. Fortunately, we're quite similar in that. 10 or 12 years ago, Mexico has had the aggregators, and there were 10,000 companies that were accepting e-payment out of the 11 million and we have 7 million out of the 11 that are informal, and only 4 million are formal. And we only had 10% of electronic payment, 90% cash. The enemy to defeat here is cash. Cash is easy, it's understandable. People don't need much to understand how it works. And the challenge is to beat that trend, because cash does not foster the growth of people and businesses, because there's no yield, there's no credit, it does not allow you to obtain better conditions. After 10 years or 12 years of CLIP and the aggregators in the market, today we have around 4 million businesses that accept e-payment in the country, with 5 million terminals, out of which 70% have been provided by aggregators with CLIP. CLIP is the largest aggregator in Mexico if you count numbers of businesses, and we are largest at Bancomer, and we hold 25% of penetration of e-payments. We're very proud of that. Brazil is around 60, Argentina 50, Chile 60, Colombia 40 something. It is a shame that in Mexico, being the second largest economy in Latin America, we rank 10th in e-payment. We were the first to have a regulation regarding aggregators. We were overcome, and we are ranked 10 now. Which are the challenges that we face today? There is a big need. 50% of the population works in the informal market. Giving credit to formal employees is difficult, and giving credit to the informal workers is impossible. How can you give a credit if you don't get past the screening? 50% of the population in Mexico is financially excluded. Adult population doesn't have an account, doesn't have a card. They don't have anything. 50% of the population in Mexico lives beneath the poverty line, and 10% beneath extreme poverty. They don't have what is necessary and basic to feed themselves. That is a very sad reality. Numbers are no coincidences. The challenge lies on this big need that we have to take care of. There's a lack of competition. We have detected this some years ago. In Mexico, the payment system is controlled by banks, such as in Brazil was the case 10 years ago, and in Argentina before Prisma. The problem and the diagnosis was the same in all of Latin America. The big difference is that some countries detected it before and acted accordingly. In Mexico, it's been detected and nothing has been done. So there is an issue regarding competition. Banks are not allowing openness, and there is no correct income distribution. Payment is the entrance to financial inclusion. When a business starts receiving payment, they have transactions, they can get an underwriting model that will enable them to have access to other things, improve sales. That's the entrance gate, so to speak. And aggregators pay an exchange rate and a discount rate which is the highest in all of Mexico. And we are taking care of the smallest businesses, and that cost is transferred to businesses unfairly. We don't have technology. Here, you have contactless penetration of around 70%, in Argentina, Guatemala 75%, and in Costa Rica it's impressive. In Mexico it's only 5%. There is no contactless or wireless technology. It's not been enabled because banks have not enabled terminals for that. We don't have QR payments. They could never come to an agreement for a standard. And here Mercado Pago is spectacular. And let's not even mention Cody because we stand really very badly. We need technology that will allow us to enable easy payment. It should be easy for people to migrate from cash to electronic payment. If it's difficult, they won't do it. That is something that's clear. We can't force them to do it. There are 30 million cards distributed by the government to distribute social programs, and guess how many are really used? Every 15 years, you see lines of people at the cashiers, ATMs, to remove cash. People are not using cards. They want to use cash. And something that is really missing is investment for the acquisition. That is to say, convincing somebody to go from cash to payments is a huge barrier. We need investment. Some 10 years ago, what the Fintech did was to invest in growth. But part of that, besides technology and products, was convincing people to migrate. Now that we've had this lack of investment, we have to become more efficient in managing investments. Nobody is going close to those small businesses because there is no cost-benefit ratio there. We need the investments to transform the excluded or the have-nots to the haves, and of course, regulation, of course. Thank you. And you touched on the subject of financial education, convincing or showing to users the benefits. And in general, financial education is a little bit more extensive or thorough. And I wanted to ask you, Pablo, how do you integrate financial education within the Finactiva model? And also, how have you adapted the supply of products responding to the recent changes, for instance, the increase in rates? Financial education is always a challenge because in our countries, the level of financial education and education of people is very low. And from the point of view of companies, the small and medium businessmen are always thinking about how to survive and how to bring daily activities and make them efficient for their business. So when you talk to them about the cash flow and the financial projections, and they have to understand their figures, they're quite at a loss. They don't have time for that. Finactiva was born 7 years ago as a lending company focused on the startup segment. We developed different financial education models. We allied with chambers of commerce and different associations to have virtual or in-presence programs regarding financial education. And what we saw was that companies were not using them. There was a huge effort and commitment regarding hiring consultants to train them financially, and people were not using them. When we asked why, they said, we don't have time. The consultant comes along and they say what we have to do, but who's going to do it? How are we going to do it? We understood that it was very costly, so we tried to develop better content with better methodology, with experts. Everything was digital to make it more scalable and more cost efficient. And we reached many companies, many employees to get better financial training, but the result still was very low. And with all this trend of embedded finances and open finance and data is more affordable, what we learned was that the challenge we had as a fintech was to develop software where we didn't teach financial education, but help them to manage their day-to-day finances, not from the outside, but rather help them do it, to make it very simple and easy. And how did we do it? We joined two ends. We are focused on B2B SMBs. We first went to the large companies. Most of the large company market is ours in Colombia. We help them to manage and orchestrate their payments to vendors, how they can obtain financing to improve the terms and improve the profitability. By doing that, we had access to important supply chains. And with that software layer, we gave them value to all these companies. But these large companies have an access to lots of solutions. This was just a supplement to what they were using on a daily basis. But the value we found there was that we had an access to SMBs communities. In Colombia, large companies have around 7,000 SMBs every year as vendors. So we went to these SMBs communities and we developed a layer of software which is called the centralized management layer, and we activated their electronic activation code, their bank accounts. We managed real time. We gave them recommendations. We told them when they should discount an accounts payable, when they should take advantage of a discount to pay a vendor. So from teaching them, trying to teach them, the accountant or the treasurer or the manager of the SMB, from that, we started running their finances without extra costs, making it very easy, and the results have been spectacular. We entered the factoring business in Colombia, and 3 years ago, and we are now managing around 90% of the market. It traditionally was run by banks. So from the lending company, we've become a financial software company with different layers for companies. We have an all-in-one platform of financial services that will become a digital bank for companies in Colombia and Peru. We have evolved in our solutions supply, and we have thought about it in a customer-centered manner with different tools that will help them understand their finances, but also running their finances. Wonderful. Mark?
Mark, Walla operates in many countries and has experience in working in a dynamic context. What strategies has it implemented to adapt its income or revenue model and continue to grow in an environment of higher rates? And as CFO, what opportunities do you identify, if you do, to make the offer of products more optimal, and continue to grow? Well, I think, Gonzalo, that you mentioned something that's very important at the beginning. You mentioned that Fintech companies' purpose, and I believe that this applies to many companies as well. You said that our purpose is not to be profitable or earn money, but solve problems. And as you were saying, in the last 2 or 3 years, and I believe this is a global phenomenon, this does not happen only in Latin America. These rates were not seen in the United States either many years ago. But in Argentina, in Colombia, we've had very high rates. And this is obviously a problem for our users. So to have a broad product offer that satisfies several clients is an important thing for us. The two most important launches that we've seen in terms of their overnight impact were the launch of the Common Investment Fund in Argentina and the remunerated accounts we have in the 3 countries. If I may say so, this is what differentiates us from common banks. If they are able, it's whether they are able to return that risk-free rate. I would say that when interest rates are high, we need to continue to think about what problems our users have and how we can solve them even more. It's not only about high rates. We also have to deal with instability, which poses difficulties when it comes to decision making. I remember that last year or this year I submitted a budget for the board after the elections in Argentina in December 2023, where I had to calculate how inflation would impact. Well, what I was saying is that we can try to forecast, but depending on the conditions at that time, it was very difficult to forecast how the different business lines would be impacted. We offer payments with the different cards, we offer loans, the evolution of the interest rate is important in this option. Savings, risky savings, and merging requirement. But what ended up happening was very different from reality. No one would have said that the exchange rate would be stable at 1,000 pesos. 1,200 pesos. So management needs to be very agile in taking decisions. They couldn't wait until the year end to find out that they couldn't reach the budget. We needed to think about different developments to adapt the business model to a situation that changed more rapidly than what we forecasted. The difficulty is not whether the rates are high, but whether they will change fast or not, and how you can adapt your model to that. That's very interesting. And speaking about challenges, I'd like to ask you, Jaime, what's the difficulties you see in Uruguay? First of all, let me praise the Argentines. It's incredible how fast they come out of challenges and problems and how they overcome them. It's a marvelous ecosystem indeed. Now I will use my Uruguayan hat again. And what I'd like to say is that Uruguayan fintechs are similar to the whole Uruguayan industry. Our markets are reduced, and a good aspect of this is that all startups and fintechs in Uruguay, we are like Pinky and Cerebro. Remember that cartoon? All days we think it's a day to conquer the world. We have that mentality and we succeed because of that, because we're serious and consistent, and we generate high quality development in the tech industry. 70% of what we export goes to the United States, and the second market is the United Kingdom, and then comes Canada, and those are very demanding markets. And fintechs are similar in that regards. We are supplying, for instance, companies of the whole of Latin America, but we are in 10 countries of Africa as well, because we have clients requesting us to offer them what we offer here. So the challenges or disadvantages that we might have are in fact the lack of a local market that enables us to develop and test products. We have to take the leap to the outer world immediately, and even though we're full of success cases and full of companies around the world trusting our companies, we lack that. That's why we're so proud of our own country, La Celeste, we call our football team. So we are proud of being serious entrepreneurs, having serious companies with good technology, and that's what I'd call our magic. Well, you did great with time and with your speech. Thank you for that. Miriam, I'd like to ask you now about collaboration with other fintechs and other stakeholders, which are necessary to continue growing the fintech industry in Mexico. Well, first of all, yes, I'd also like to praise all of your work. Really, what Colombia mentions about collaboration, Argentina facing the challenges posed by governments. You are These are all wonderful stories in Latin America. We are all very resilient, faced with our own realities, right? And it's very important for us to focus on what others are doing properly. In Mexico's case, in the next 6 years, I think Mexico should focus on what other countries have done, should open itself, should open competition. This is absolutely necessary. With a 50% of financial inclusion, only 25% of penetration of e-payments. We need more investment, more stakeholders. We need We need new mindsets that can discuss issues at the table of today. We need new problems brought to us in order for us to solve them. It's not something that we believe. People have many problems, and we need the technology. We know there are solutions that exist in other countries, had been implemented properly and successfully, so we should adopt those solutions to, if we want to create new things, we won't be able to have technology solve and address new issues. And we need government collaboration as well, in Mexico in particular, and globally, I believe. The main supplier and the main client in all countries are governments. And in Mexico, we have over 2,000 municipalities, but only 10% accept e-payments for taxes. So I wonder, how do they pay their suppliers? Fortunately, social benefits are paid by means of a card. As I told you, people still queue at the cashier, but it's in advance. So governments need to be digitalized as well. They need to set the example. And fintechs can collaborate with that, because traditional stakeholders do not know how to address those problems. Maybe they are not interested, and we can cooperate and help with that. So international players, fintech, and governments collaboration is key in Mexico. The Secretary of Commerce in Mexico is luckily implementing a project to promote public policies that aiming to reach collaboration of all these stakeholders. I hope this all becomes a reality. You mentioned the importance of data, of digital footprints, and Mark, when we look at those data internally, fintechs managing a lot of the data. How can you turn this into a tool in terms of management and risk management within companies? What is your experience at Voila? Well, I think we are a very data-driven company. We have many important challenges we face. Miriam mentioned the difficulty to increase credit for the informal workers in our markets. This is the fact that has maybe impacted Wola's business the most, is to be able to scale that business vertical using user data and not relying solely on public sources or traditional banks sources, because the reality is that if you use the same information that everyone uses, you will reach the same conclusion, which is that if you don't have credit stability, you won't be offered credit. We thus designed Walla Score. It's a scoring model based on our users' data, based on the use they make of the tool, how they enter data, how they do the onboarding, when they use the card, and in what are the expenses. And that's how we can address their needs. And this has enabled us to multiply by 5 the segment which lacked access to credit before. So I think this has had the largest impact. As CFO, I have worked with the data team a lot in order to build a model to measure the profitability of users singularly, in a consolidated manner, not entering into details in order to know what decision one needs to take. And in terms of marketing, we collaborated to optimize the acquisition efforts, the user acquisition efforts, in terms of the channel by means of which we acquire users. There are different digital channels that we use. Some of them have payback or profitability goals, and we were able to optimize that in terms of the data usage. Well, I think it's very interesting how you interact with different stakeholders of the fintech sector in terms of data generation, data use to create greater engagement of clients. And this, in the end, leads to more data, more health of the financial system. One of the main problems I believe we have is lack of information for decision making. So anything that strengthens this situation will add value and will generate greater satisfaction of the end user. So I think what you're doing is in the different markets is great, facing all the different challenges. I believe we've run out of time, haven't we? So I have many, that's a pity because I have many questions left. I suppose the audience has the same experience. So you can, of course, join the panelists afterwards and ask them yourselves, and I'll surely do it myself. Thank you, everyone.
Muchísimas gracias a usted.